My husband forgot me in a single night. Not because of illness, not because of tragedy. He simply woke up and decided I was no longer part of his life. 35 years of marriage, thousands of meals cooked, nights spent mending his shirts, and our daughter we raised together. All of it suddenly meant nothing to him. But the truth I uncovered that cold winter night was far darker than I could have imagined. And it changed everything. In the small town of Willow Creek, I spent 35 years as the wife of Edward, a man whose ambition once set our little community ablaze. We built a life together, raising our daughter Sophie through lean years and fleeting triumphs. I was the steady hand, cooking, sewing, keeping the home fires burning, while Edward climbed the ranks of a regional investment firm. But in the winter of 2024, our world shifted. Doctors diagnosed Edward with early-stage Alzheimer's, a cruel thief that began to unravel his sharp mind. Strangest of all, the first thing he seemed to forget was me. I bore it silently, tending to Edward with the same devotion I'd always shown. I wiped spilled soup from his chin, coaxed him to eat, and swept up shattered dishes after his outbursts, swallowing the pain of his blank, unrecognizing stares. "Who are you?" he'd demand, his voice sharp with suspicion, as if I were an intruder in our home. Each time, I clung to the neurologist's words. Sometimes the first person forgotten is the one they loved most. It was my lifeline, a fragile thread of comfort in the face of his rejection. But one chilly evening, everything changed. I overheard Edward on the phone, his voice clear and deliberate, not a trace of confusion. "I'm pushing her to the edge," he said to a friend. "I want Clara to ask for the divorce first. Marianne's been alone too long, raising her son, scraping by. I can't keep her waiting." The words hit like a blow. Marianne, his college sweetheart, the poised city-bred woman who'd once captivated him, had re-entered his life. The Alzheimer's, the memory loss, the tantrums. It was all a charade, a calculated act to drive me away without Edward bearing the guilt. I stood frozen in the kitchen, holding a bowl of stew I'd made for him. The truth burned. 35 years of love, sacrifice, and quiet endurance had been reduced to a prop in his exit strategy. I set the bowl down, a bitter smile curling my lips. If this was what he wanted, I'd give it to him, but on my terms. The next morning, my resolve hardened. I moved through my routine, feeding Edward and cleaning up his latest mess, a plate of pancakes flung across the floor in a fit of frustration. His eyes flickered with confusion, as if a part of him sensed he'd gone too far. But I didn't pause to comfort him. Instead, I guided him to the couch, turned on his favorite old westerns, and began sweeping up the debris. My foot throbbed from a splash of hot coffee, but I ignored it, focusing on the task. Later, as I washed dishes, I felt Edward's gaze boring into me from the doorway. His presence was heavy, his once commanding frame still imposing despite his age. "Are you hungry?" I asked, keeping my tone soft. "I can make you some tomato soup." But his demeanor shifted abruptly. "Who are you?" he snapped, voice laced with paranoia. "Get out before I call the police." Before I could respond, he lunged forward, shoving me toward the door with startling strength. Barefoot and coatless, I stumbled into the snowy yard, the door slamming shut behind me. The cold bit at my feet as I limped toward the community center, where I knew a spare key was kept. A young security guard, Lily, spotted me and rushed over, concern etched on her face. "Mrs. Thornton, stay here. I'll grab the key." She returned with a pair of boots and the key ring, her kindness a small warmth in the biting chill. Together, we returned to the house. I knocked firmly, but Edward's voice growled from inside. "I don't know you. Leave." Lily didn't hesitate. She unlocked the door and stepped in, her tone sharp but steady. "Mr. Thornton, this is Clara, your wife. You've been married for decades. If you don't believe me, check the marriage certificate in your desk drawer." Edward's eyes narrowed, but he shuffled to the bedroom, returning with the faded document. He studied it, then glanced at me, his lips twitching in reluctant acknowledgement. "Fine," he muttered. "Come in." I stepped inside, picking up the certificate he'd tossed carelessly to the floor. I carried it to the bedroom, my heart heavy but resolute. That night, Sophie and her husband, Mark, came for dinner. Edward sat close to Sophie, pointedly ignoring me as I served the meal with a forced smile. The braised chicken I'd made, a dish Edward once loved, sat untouched in his bowl. Sophie's gentle reassurance, "He's just confused, Mom," did little to ease the ache. I was an outsider in my own home. Days later, my world tilted again. Edward's behavior grew more erratic, his demands more childish. One night, after I'd cooked 3 different meals to appease him, I overheard another phone call. "I'm making it impossible for her," Edward said, his voice cold. "She'll crack soon. Marianne deserves better than waiting in the shadows." The bowl in my hand slipped, shattering on the floor. My vision blurred, and I collapsed. The weight of betrayal too much to bear. I woke in the hospital, Sophie and Mark at my bedside, Edward lingering by the door. His expression was impassive, as if my collapse was merely an inconvenience. Before I could speak, he stepped forward. "Let's get a divorce," he said flatly. "I was hoping you'd say it first." Then he walked out. Sophie's eyes darted away, her fingers brushing her nose. A nervous tick I knew too well. "You knew," I whispered, my voice trembling. "You knew he was faking it." Sophie stammered. "I only just found out, Mom." But her avoidance told the truth. Even my daughter had sided with Edward, complicit in his deception. My heart broke anew. "Go," I said quietly. "I'll be fine." Discharged from the hospital, I wandered to the riverside park, snow falling softly around me. I sat on a bench, the cold seeping into my bones, and stared at the frozen lake. For the first time, I felt a strange calm. No tears, no rage, just clarity. I was done clinging to a life that no longer belonged to me. A vibrant young woman approached, her guitar case slung over her shoulder. "Hey, you look like you could use some company," she said, her smile infectious. "I'm Nora. I play at a lounge nearby. Want to come hear some music?" I hesitated, then followed, leaving behind the apples Sophie had left at my bedside, now browning on the bench. The lounge was warm, its soft jazz and dim lighting a balm to my frayed nerves. Nora's folk songs filled the air, her voice weaving stories of resilience and hope. Over a colorful cocktail, bitter at first, sweet at the finish, I felt something shift. Maybe life could hold sweetness again. Back at home, I faced Edward and Sophie's frantic calls. "Where were you?" Edward demanded, but I cut him off. "I went home," I said, ending the call. When they arrived that evening, Edward's irritation was palpable. "You're not even cooking dinner now?" he snapped. Sophie chimed in. "Mom, Marianne's not the villain here. She's had a tough life too." My laugh was sharp, hollow. "Not the villain." I turned to Edward, my voice steady. "I agree to the divorce. Let's be done with it." The room fell silent, but before anyone could respond, the doorbell rang. Marianne swept in, grocery bag in hand, her smile polished and proprietary. "I thought you might need dinner," she said, gliding to the kitchen as if it were hers. I watched, detached, as Marianne and Edward moved with practiced ease, her apron strings untied by his familiar hands. I wheeled my suitcase to the door. "Edward, make time for the divorce papers," I said calmly, and walked out. Marianne's faux concern followed me. Did I upset her? But I didn't look back. I found refuge with Nora, who welcomed me into her cozy apartment. "Be my roommate," she teased, introducing me to a purring tabby named Ginger. As I unpacked, my phone rang. Dr. James Carter, our old family doctor, urged me to reconsider. "You and Edward have so much history," he said. "Marianne's back, and he wants to give her a place in his life. But maybe you could patch things up." My response was firm. "I've held this marriage together alone for years. I'm done." I hung up, reflecting on why Edward had chosen me. Decades ago, I'd chased him boldly, encouraged by my aunt, the town's librarian, who'd said, "Love fearlessly, Clara." But Edward's heart had always leaned toward Marianne, a fleeting college romance that never faded. I'd worked grueling factory shifts to fund his education, believing my sacrifices would bind us. Now, I saw the truth. His choice was born of obligation, not love. I met Edward at his office to finalize the divorce. Gossip rippled through the lobby as I held up our marriage certificate, silencing whispers about Marianne's role as the real Mrs. Thornton. With Nora's help, I'd consulted a lawyer, drafting a fair settlement. Edward's sneer, "You actually have friends now," met my cool reply, "I do now." At the courthouse, the judge's stamp sealed our end. I exhaled, free at last. Job hunting proved tough. Restaurants and stores politely rejected me, citing my age or lack of tech skills. But I persisted, enrolling in community college courses, digital literacy, creative writing, even video editing. Nora suggested I share my journey online. "Call it Clara's new chapter," she said, helping edit the first clip. My videos, cooking, gardening, studying, laughing with Nora, caught on. Aunt Clara became a beacon for viewers seeking authenticity. Comments poured in. "Your warmth heals me." Internet mom vibes. My southern drawl, once a source of shame, became my signature. Then the storm hit. Anonymous posts on a women's empowerment forum painted me as a scheming ex-wife exploiting Edward's Alzheimer's for clout. The lies snowballed, fueled by Marianne's narrative of a tragic love story. My comment sections turned toxic, accusing me of manipulating a sick man. I nearly deleted my account, but Nora urged me to fight back. I posted a raw, honest video holding up the divorce decree. "My husband faked Alzheimer's to push me away," I said, voice steady. "I'm not a villain. I'm just a woman reclaiming her life." The truth resonated. Viewers dug into timelines, uncovering photos of Edward and Marianne on business trips. A former caregiver confirmed Edward's deception. The tide turned, and my story became one of resilience, not victimhood. 3 years later, my life was my own. I'd earned my driver's license, bought a used car, and traveled the Southwest, posting videos from desert trails and coastal towns. My online community grew, calling me Aunt Clara with affection. I'd planted a garden at my old house, now maintained by a neighbor, and sent homemade jams to my internet kids. Edward's real Alzheimer's had worsened. Marianne, overwhelmed by his outbursts, divorced him, taking a hefty settlement. Sophie, busy with work, struggled to manage his care. One day, I visited Edward. After a fall left him bedridden. His eyes lit up, mistaking me for the past. "Clara, let's start over," he pleaded, gripping my hand. I pulled away gently. "I'm just a visitor," I said, leaving flowers by his bed. Later, Sophie called, frantic. Edward had wandered to a train station, muttering my name, clutching a book he wanted to read to me. "He only remembers you," she said, begging me to visit. I, standing in a canyon under a blazing sunrise, replied, "I am myself first." I hung up, Nora's words echoing. "Don't let the past dictate your future."
If Clara's journey of reclaiming her life and outsmarting Edward's cruel deception had you rooting for her, or even stunned by the betrayal, give this story a big thumbs up, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next powerful tale of love, deceit, or triumphant comebacks. Now, I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever faced a heartbreaking betrayal like Clara did? Or maybe you've got a story about rising above when everything seemed stacked against you? Drop it below. Let's get the conversation started. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.